Hey, Claire here from Pitt News Magazine. Welcome back to Pitt News on Air. So, you've probably heard the saying, if you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. Well, today we're flipping that on its head. What if paying cash wasn't the smart move at all? What if you owned nothing and you were happy about it? Our buddy Jordan Black is back with an article that made me rethink the whole idea of ownership. Cars, houses, furniture. Do we really need to own everything? Or is leasing and investing the smarter play in this income-first era? Stick around, because Jake and Lena are going to walk us through this new way of thinking about money, assets, and maybe even Teslas. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something core to personal finance, maybe even taking a bit of a wrecking ball to it. We're talking about the whole idea of outright ownership.
Yeah, exactly.
And our mission today is to figure out why, especially now with these high-yield investment options, locking up your money in a physical thing might actually be a huge mistake.
Right. And this whole thing kicks off with a scenario that, honestly, lots of people could face. The source material talks about someone who saved up $55,000.
Okay.
Specifically from dividend income, which is impressive in itself. And they wanted to buy a Tesla. Outright.
The dream, right. Pay cash, own it free and clear.
That's the traditional thinking, definitely. Own the car, no debt, no hassle. It feels like you've made it, financially speaking.
But there's always a but. This dream gets challenged pretty quickly. The source mentions someone called Mr. Turner. And he asks this killer question. It's simple, but it just changes everything. He says, why tie up that much cash in a car?
A depreciating asset, no less.
Exactly. When you could lease it, he says, and invest the difference instead. Boom, that just flips the whole perspective.
It really does. It sets up this, philosophical battle. On one side, you've got the old school financial advice. Think Dave Ramsey, maybe?
Sure, pay cash or you can't afford it. Especially for things that lose value.
Right. It's very focused on avoiding debt, managing risk. Comes from a place of maybe scarcity thinking.
And the other side, what's the counter?
Well, that's this income-first idea. Or maybe thinking about capital productivity. The argument is your money, your capital, it's like a tool. It should be working, generating more money.
The locking it in a car means it's idle. Or worse, shrinking.
Exactly. That's the opportunity cost. So the real question for you listening is, does that old-fashioned peace of mind from owning something outright outweigh the potential earnings your cash could be making in today's market?
Okay, let's dig into that. What makes the potential earnings so high now? This isn't your grandpa's savings account. What specific investment vehicle changed the game here?
Yeah, that's the key. It's these newer high-yield ETFs, exchange-traded funds.
Right.
You might see them called YieldMax or Yield Boost funds. And they work very differently from, say, a standard dividend fund.
How so? They're not just collecting dividends.
No, they're actively generating income, mostly through option strategies.
Okay, deep dive time. Explain that simply. How do they squeeze out these massive yields? What's the mechanism?
Well, the main strategy is selling covered calls. So imagine the fund owns shares of, let's pick Tesla, since that's in the example.
Okay.
They own the Tesla stock, and at the same time, they sell someone else the right to buy that stock from them later at a slightly higher price.
That sale, they sell, that generates cash.
Exactly. It generates an immediate cash payment called a premium, and they collect these premiums, often monthly. Then they distribute that cash, that premium income, to the people who own the ETF shares.
And because they're doing this constantly, and maybe on volatile stocks like Tesla where options premiums are higher?
Precisely. They can generate really eye-popping income streams.
Eye-popping is right. Which brings us back to the $55,000, the cash for the car.
We need to look at the actual numbers the source uses to see what that money could have been doing instead.
Okay, so the sources give a couple of specific examples, and these yields really highlight the opportunity cost. First up is TSLY. That's an ETF linked to Tesla, using that option strategy we just talked about.
And the yield?
Currently around 100% annually.
Wait, seriously? 100%?
Yeah, it sounds unbelievable, but due to Tesla's volatility, the premiums can be that high. So if you put the $55,000 in TSLY, you're looking at a potential income of, $55,000 in just 1 year.
Wow. Okay. That's staggering. What's the other example?
PLTY. That one's linked to Palantir. Its yield is lower, but still huge, about 55% annually.
So the same $55,000 invested there
could potentially generate about $30,250 in income over a year.
Okay, this is where it clicks. The comparison isn't just $55,000 cost versus zero.
Yeah.
It's spending the $55K costs you the car price, PLUS the $55K or $30K that money could have earned. Exactly. Not buying the car doesn't just save $55K, it potentially earns $55K, using the TSLY example. It's almost a wash in dollar terms, but one is an appreciating income stream, the other a depreciating asset.
It completely reframes the decision. It's not about, can I afford it anymore?
It's about, is this the smartest place for my capital? Should this money be working harder?
Right. Which leads us perfectly into comparing the options head to head. Buy, lease, or finance, but always considering what happens if that $55K stays invested.
Let's break it down. Option 1, buy the Tesla with cash.
Simple. $55,000 spent. Gone from the investment account.
Correct. The capital is locked up in the car, which immediately starts depreciating. You get the no debt feeling, sure, but the financial cost, you've given up that potential income stream. Using TSLY, that's $55,000 of income you didn't get. That's a massive price to pay.
Okay, option 2, leasing. This is what Mr. Turner suggested. Let's say the lease is, what, $500 a month?
Yeah, the source uses $500 a month as a competitive figure, so annually that's $6,000. But here's the kicker. The $55,000 stays invested. It keeps working.
So run the numbers with TSLY.
Okay. The investment potentially earns $55,000. You pay $6,000 for the lease. Your net gain, $49,000.
$49,000 left over after paying for the car all year.
Yep. You drove the Tesla, and your net worth potentially increased by almost $50,000 because you leased instead of bought.
That number just fundamentally changes the game. We're not quibbling over a few percentage points of interest. This is life-changing money for many people.
Absolutely. And even if we use the more, let's say, conservative PLTY yield of 55%, that's $30,250 earned minus the $6,000 lease cost, still leaves you with $24,250 net gain.
Still a fantastic result.
Right. So the source argues leasing is mathematically superior in this context. You get the car, lower payments, no resale headache, and your capital keeps generating significant income.
But hang on, what about financing? People hate leasing sometimes. They want to own it eventually. Let's say you finance it. Option 3, maybe a 6.5% loan over 5 years. Payments would be higher, maybe around $12,950 a year.
Okay, let's look at financing. It's still way better than paying cash based on this model. Your $55,000 stays invested. With TSLY, it earns $55,000. You pay out $12,950 for the loan.
Leaving $42,050 net gain.
Still huge.
Still huge. And with PLTY, earn $30,250, pay $12,950. That leaves $17,300 net gain.
So the takeaway is clear from the numbers.
Yeah. In any scenario where that initial $55,000 stays invested in these high-yield options, you come out financially way ahead compared to buying with cash. You get the car, and you potentially boost your net worth significantly.
Sure.
The decision becomes less about simple affordability and much more about capital efficiency.
Okay, the math is compelling. Almost too compelling. My spidey senses are tingling. Yields of 55%, 100%, that screams risk. We have to address the downsides. This can't be free money.
Absolutely not. And this is probably the most crucial part of the discussion. These high yields come with significant risks. They are not guaranteed.
So what are if someone listening decides to go down this income first path, what risks are they taking on? Lay it out for us. Okay, the biggest one is principal erosion, or the risk to your initial investment. Remember how the income comes from selling options like covered calls? That limits the upside.
How so?
Well, if the underlying stock, say Tesla, suddenly skyrockets in price, the fund won't capture all that gain because they already sold the right for someone else to buy it at a lower price, the strike price of the call option.
Okay, so upside is capped. What about the downside?
That's where it gets dangerous. If the underlying stock price falls significantly, the fund's value, its net asset value, or NAV will also fall. The income distributions might continue for a while, making it look good, but your actual initial investment, that $55,000, could be shrinking fast.
Oh, so you could be getting, say, $4,000 a month in income, but your $55K principal might have dropped to $40K. Your total return could actually be negative, even with a high payout.
Exactly. That's the critical distinction. Distribution yield versus total return. The headline yield number isn't the whole story. If the NAV drops, you might just be getting your own money back minus losses.
That's huge. So the income isn't guaranteed profit, and the high yield really just reflects the high risk and volatility of the underlying asset and the strategy.
Precisely. These aren't like savings accounts or bonds. They are linked to volatile stocks and used derivatives. High potential reward, high potential risk.
What about taxes? Traditional advice often favors simplicity, less debt partly for easier taxes. These complex income streams must complicate things.
They definitely can. The distributions from these ETFs often include something called a return of capital, or ROC.
Return to capital. Sounds like getting your own money back.
In a way, it is. It means part of the payout isn't profit or interest. It's literally the fund returning some of your initial investment. This reduces your cost basis for tax purposes. It might defer taxes until you sell the ETF shares, which sound appealing.
Right.
But it means you have to meticulously track your adjusted cost basis. It adds a layer of bookkeeping and complexity that, say, simple dividend stocks don't have. It's not passive.
Okay, so the trade-off for that high potential income is high volatility, the risk of losing your principal, capped upside, and more complex tax tracking. Definitely not a set-it-and-forget-it deal.
Not at all. It requires active monitoring and understanding, but this whole analysis, this car example, it forces a bigger question, right? The author suggests applying this logic more broadly.
Beyond the car.
Yeah, to almost anything you might own. Tech gadgets, fancy vacations, maybe even furniture. The core question remains, could my capital be working significantly harder somewhere else? If you can rent or lease the use of something for less than your capital could earn by being invested.
Yeah, math says don't buy it. Lease the lifestyle. Invest the cash.
That's the argument. But then the source brings up one major exception.
Let me guess. Housing.
You got it.
Yeah.
Housing. The don't own it logic seems to break down when it comes to your primary home.
Why? Is it just emotional attachment?
There's that, but the source points to more tangible, non-financial benefits that kind of override the pure math. Things like security, safety, stability, peace of mind.
Right. If the stock market crashes or these high-yield funds blow up.
You still have a roof over your head. Your home provides this fundamental security, a hedge against total financial disaster that renting just doesn't offer in the same way. Plus, the sense of community, dignity, putting down roots, and the practical point. With a fixed-rate mortgage, your payment is stable. Rent generally goes up.
That makes a lot of sense. Your home is kind of your foundation, your security anchor. Everything else is more like consumption or lifestyle.
Pretty much. So it circles back to that core decision the source presents. For things like the Tesla, do you want to own the asset itself, the depreciating car? Or do you want to own the income stream, the potentially highly productive, though riskier cash flow?
And the source clearly leans towards
owning the income, leasing the lifestyle, at least for non-essential depreciating assets. But interestingly, the author doesn't completely dismiss the old ways. They suggest both perspectives have merit.
How so? Dave Ramsey and Lan Turner shaking hands.
Sort of. The ability to pay cash, like Dave Ramsey advocates, proves you have the financial discipline and means. You can afford it. That's step one. But then the knowledge, the Lan Turner perspective, that the same cash could be working much harder for you, that demands considering a different choice in today's environment.
So financial responsibility meets financial optimization.
You could put it that way.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the big takeaway for you listening seems to be that we're in a different financial world now. The potential for capital to generate income is, well, potentially much higher than in the past, thanks to vehicles like these ETFs. And this might mean that owning less, strategically, could actually lead to earning more.
But, and it's a huge but, that potential extra earning comes bundled with significant risk and complexity.
You absolutely have to understand the option strategies, the volatility risk, the NAV erosion potential, the tax implications. This isn't a free lunch.
Not even close. It demands research, understanding, and ongoing attention.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to chew on. If financial security, or at least a component of it, can potentially be built by owning a highly productive, income-generating financial asset, even if it's volatile, does that change how we feel about owning physical things, like the car? Does traditional ownership lose some of its emotional power, becoming more of a purely financial calculation than it was for, say, our parents?
It's a really interesting question. Does owning the income stream feel as secure as owning the thing itself if the numbers work out? Maybe the definition of asset and security is shifting. Something to think about.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Pitt News on Air. Big thanks to Jordan for stirring up my financial identity crisis. Seriously, I may never look at a car loan the same way again. And of course, thanks to Jake and Lena for breaking it all down. Don't forget, you can dive deeper into articles like this when you subscribe to Pitt News Magazine at pittnews.com. And hey, this podcast? Make sure you follow along on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube to catch fresh episodes every Wednesday. Until next time, lease the car, keep the cash working, and maybe, just maybe, own nothing and still be happy.